It's time for the Nappy Time Lectures with the Amateur Sommelier. So, hello everyone, the Amateur Sommelier. And yes, I'm well aware that I need haircuts. And I need haircuts. And the mutton chops are getting in the way. Anyway, aside from my not so wonderful face that you'll have to deal with, unfortunately, I will apologize for that. I have to work on that at some point. We're going to go over the first lecture in my prototype lecture series. And our first lecture is, how does the amateur sommelier taste wine? And it's a lot more complicated than you would think. I know I usually go through the same process when I taste the wines. However, we've never gone into the full depths. I did a video last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever years ago, doing basically an intro. This is going to be more in-depth, and I have some sources, actually. First being the Wine Folly Master Guide for all of us fancy people who really love wine, and my second source being the Essential Guide for people who are not so obsessed with wine but still want to learn about it. Essentially, very excellent sources by Puckett and Hammock if you want to check those out for the source material. I do have 3 objectives. I feel like there should have been more. Anyway, we're going to identify the steps to taste wine, differentiate between primary and secondary aromas, and classify taste sensitivities. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be showing some of the slide notes I've made, because yes, I actually did do a presentation sort of format for this, just so I can read my notes. Excuse me. I just ate dinner. Bleh. I'm getting better with my diet, if that helps. Probably not. So, the 4-step method, the very basis of what I do for wine tasting. The first step is looking, and you're looking for color, and you're looking for clarity. The second step is the smell. Use your nose, is what I say in my videos. Third step is taste. I call that the palate. You taste the wine, you switch it around, and you see what you notice. And conclusion, thoughts on the wine. Is it good? Is it terrible? Tannin, acidity, other characteristics. So, looking. This is the invisible glass, the invisible wine, because I obviously can't have any. So, you swirl, and you want to angle it, and you want to angle it for the color. You want the hue of the rim and the palate, and compare that to similar wines. You don't want to look at the wine and compare it to all of the wines in the entire world, because A, that's overwhelming, and B, that's just insane. You want to compare the hue to similar wines, so you want to compare, if you're tasting a Cabernet Sauvignon, to other Cabernet Sauvignons. Is this paler in color, or is it more intense in color? And that intensity is based on several factors, which, we have our sources for. I think it's the other book, actually. Never mind. And then the other thing you want to look for are wine legs, which is what I've started to introduce. It's actually a physics effect where you want to see the legs go down slowly. It's basically drips of the wine that slowly go down. If they go slower, it usually means it's higher quality. If they go fast, you might have a problem. Excuse me. So then we go to the smell. Now, I actually realized that I have been doing smell basically awfully. Because what you're supposed to do is the prime sniff. That's what I do here. But there's also the long sniff. Long sniff is after you go in with your nose almost into the glass, you want to slowly move your nose away from the glass. Get kind of the rim there. Because actually, when you smell it, there's actually there's three characteristics you want to look for. When you're in the lower lip, so basically when you just go in, full send, like, anyway, when you go inside the glass, you're looking for rich and fruity aromas. That's where you're going to get kind of the sweetness of the wine. But when you back up slowly, that's when you'll get kind of the floral aromas. That's where you get what are called volatile esters, very fancy chemistry stuff that I won't go in for this video. Future video, I will not rule out. Hopefully I will not have to do that, because that means something's very wrong with the esophagus, and we're not hopefully going to have to deal with that. So, that being said, two things to keep in mind when you do smelling. If you like perfume or cologne or something that has a really powerful smell because you want to smell good around other people, I mean, it's logical, we all want to smell good around other people, Only crazy people don't want to smell good in front of people. Anyway, perfume, cologne, something very strong is a no-go. No. Don't want to do that. Reason being, it's for the second reason, it's called nose overload. So the perfume or the cologne is going to overwhelm your nose, making it harder for you to smell the wine, which is not good. You want to be able to smell the wine and not your perfume or cologne when you're trying to evaluate your wine. Now, if you're not wearing perfume or cologne and you still have a nose overload, it's like, holy cow, what do I do? I actually found this out from doing my research, and it's very simple. That you basically sniff your arm, or somewhere other part of your body, but arm's probably easier. Basically, what you're trying to do is get your body odor to neutralize the smell of the wine so that you can more accurately depict the smells in the wine. I found that very fascinating. I found a lot of things very fascinating, actually. So, we do all of that. The second question, and this is something I have struggled myself with, as even an amateur, is what am I trying to smell for? And there are three types of aromas you're looking for. We have primary aromas, we have the secondary aromas, and we actually have tertiary aromas. Which I thought there was only primary and secondary, and now there's tertiary, and I don't know. I'm an amateur. I'm sorry. I don't know anything. So, primary. These are derived from the grapes themselves. You get your fruitiness. You might get some citrus. You'll get kind of the floral aromas, herbs, and spices. Very fascinating. Very interesting stuff with that. The secondary aromas are derived from the fermentation process and microorganisms. So, kind of the earthy, sort of dirt, even tannin smell you can smell from it. That's actually a secondary aroma. Another example I found this fascinating is if you like your Chardonnays to be buttery. The buttery smell from Chardonnay is actually a secondary aroma, which I thought was like, ooh, interesting. And finally, the tertiary aromas are derived from oxidation and aging. Basically, getting the oxygen in with the wine as it ages in the bottle, in the barrels. Fun stuff. The example I found for this, and I cannot say for sure if this is actually a thing, because I don't drink these types of wines. Maybe I should in the future. One of them probably is not happening at all. Are the nutty flavors. So kind of like an almond, pecan, other nuts. In older champagnes and sherries. Now, champagne is a sparkling. I don't do sparklings on the channel. I don't like carbonation in my wine. I like it in my soda. Also can't even have that, by the way. Sherries. Don't think I've ever had a sherry. Definitely haven't had one on the channel. Probably not happening anytime soon currently. Definitely not even sure. So, next part of this is, what if my wine smells awful? Speaking of awful, I have to kind of go to the bathroom, so excuse me for 5 whole seconds. Or editing portion. Be right back. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, and others, I'm back, and what happened in that bathroom will not be discussed. However, it is quite related to the next part of this lecture series. What happens if my wine smells awful? The first awful smell is corked. Now, as you guys, gals, etc., know very well, I have issues with getting the cork out of the bottle. Then I have to do some surgery, and it ends very poorly. I need a decanter. It's very not good. But a wine that is corked should remind you quite well of wet cardboard. Even better, a wet dog. If you don't have a dog and don't understand the awful smell when it's pouring rain out, you let them back in and you have to dry them off. Think of it as kind of musty. Very, very old, very blah. Usually this happens, the cork gets into the wine during final processing, aging. It kind of leaches into the wine. It's disgusting. We don't like that. Now, the sources that I've read said you could just return the bottle because it's faulty. Never had to do it. So, if you do find that you can actually do that, let me know in the comments, because I could have been saving a lot of money, and wow. The next awful smell is what's called reduction. This is when wine has insufficient oxygen in the bottle during the aging, bottling process, whether it's aging in the bottle or aging in the barrel. Now, what you want to look for in your smells is boiled garlic, which I'm not going to lie, I've never boiled garlic, so I don't know what that smells like. Cabbage, I guess an old cabbage, also very not familiar with that smell. Sulfur, so probably like, I'd say like bad eggs, very heavy sulfur smell to it. And the way you can actually fix that is actually with a decanter. If you put the wine through a decanter, you mix it. Not so thoroughly that it just splashes out everywhere, but just let it breathe. Just let it incorporate a lot of oxygen in the air. It usually fixes the wine. Never had to try it before, so not 100% sure if it works. Again, let me know in the comments. The next problem with a wine smell is when a wine is oxidized. It has a flat smell, it's brown in color. I've had this issue with quite a few wines. And I'm not really sure where the oxidation process comes in. I'd have to look back at the sources again for that. But for your reds, they're going to be dry and quite bitter. Now, dryness also comes in with your tannins, so you don't want to say an overly tannin wine is just like, bleh, that's been oxidized too much. I don't think there's that. Although I do think if it's like a flat smell, then you're just like, what am I doing here? That's when I immediately say, we're going to have a problem. That's for your reds. The whites, interesting enough, you'll smell apple cider. And it's kind of an old apple cider. It's not a good apple cider. We're like, ooh, apple cider, I want that. No, this is not good apple cider. It's not good. I'm sorry for all of the apple cider fans out there. What happened to my thing? Wiggy wiggy. It'll work. Okay. So, the next type of awful smell is what I would like to call ultraviolet damage. And it's very simple. Artificial lighting or sun for extended periods. They get into the wine. They start making reactions. Your wine basically kind of breaks apart all of the tannins, the other chemicals in the wine that make the wine taste delicious. I call these the Walmart wines, because Walmart sells wines. I guess apparently also Kroger does, Trader Joe's. We call them the Walmart wines here on the channel. And the way to fix that is literally to lead them into everlasting darkness. Yes, actually, you want to put your wines in a very dark, very absent of light area. Ideally, a cool everlasting darkness area. Reds, you want to go between 55 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Your whites, you want to go somewhere between 40 and 50 Fahrenheit. Yes. And then, finally, excuse me, we have what is called thermonuclear damage. And this is where you actually cook your wine. Deterioration of wine starts at 82 degrees Fahrenheit. I did not know that. Kind of wish I knew that 3 years ago. Yes, that was the Cape May trip. Yeah, one of us didn't know that. Probably why his wines, when he got home, were basically bad. So that kind of was a thing. Didn't know that. Oops. And so the deterioration starts at 82 degrees Fahrenheit. You're literally cooking your wine at 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So, yeah, I cooked all my wines, basically. So, that was a lot of money down the drain. Oofy. Didn't know that. So, what makes your thermonuclear damage so interesting is that it actually smells quite good when you open the bottle and you try to smell it. Because you're going to actually notice that you're going to have this caramel sensation on your nose. Like, oh my gosh, it's caramel. I love this. You can also smell kind of the cooked fruits. So if you regularly actually cook your fruits, I'm not sure how that smells. Let me know in the comments. But apparently, it's supposed to be pleasant. It's sweet. It's like yay. And then it tastes bloody awful. It's flat. There's no clear characteristics as far as tannin, acidity, any primary, secondary characteristics you may notice on the nose. It ain't there. It's just like, what did I just drink? I didn't even notice what the taste was. It's just weird. Similar to oxidized wine, the thermonuclear damage, which, yes, I will stop for the sake of, you know, everyone's sanity. The wine may also brown, and brown wine is no good wine. So we'll move on to taste. And taste can easily be described as swish, swish, swish. In the mouth, not the hands. Calm down. You can also do a medium sip followed by smaller sips, which I guess you just, and then you like, I never do that. So I go by swish method. What you are looking for in taste is wine structure. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wow. Lots of things to get in here. Okay. So, first step, is it sweet or is it dry? Very easy to figure that out. If you notice that it's sweet, it's sweet. If you feel like your mouth just went through the Gobi Desert, that's dry. Very simple. Now, to go with the drying, that goes with the tannin, which is astringency, bitter. You're just like, oh my god, I need a gallon of water. The acidity is where your mouth is watering, where it's just like, there's like more saliva, it's more watery. It's very interesting. The more of that sensation exists, the more acidity exists. Now, when you swallow and you feel the warm or burning sensation, that's what I call it, that's the alcohol. And it can either be like, oh, that's a little thing going on there, or you can be like, wow, I feel like I just set my esophagus on fire. And if you have GERD, you really set your esophagus on fire. And if you've been drinking heavily with GERD, then you don't even notice that you've set your esophagus on fire and are trying to put it out with a can of gasoline. Very unfortunate. It's a very funny joke. It's really nice. Anyway. Next, we have what people in the wine industry call body. You have light body and you have full bodied. And you are like, how does wine have body? It's not human. It's not animal. What is this? So, the body is how much of your mouth is filled with flavor. If it is like, wow, my entire mouth just experienced this wine, that is what is called full-bodied. If there's like maybe half the mouth experiencing the wine, maybe less than that, it's light-bodied. Now, next part is the finish. If you detect extra flavors after smelling it on the nose, or if there's more intensity to the current flavors, that is where you will notice. Takes actually about 4 to 60 seconds to determine your finish. That is what we call length. It's the time for the aftertaste to dissipate. You then want to determine the complexity of the wine, which is the number of flavors you've identified and the difficulty of finding those flavors. So if there's a lot of flavors, it's complex. If it's difficult to find the flavors, even if there's like 2 or 3, it's still considered complex. And if it's really easy, it's obviously a simple wine. And then there's what are called layers, which are when flavors can potentially change in sip. Where you're just like, ooh, I taste this. But then as you go through your swishing and your swallowing for the finish, then it's just like, ooh, but I also picked this up, or this is subtle. There's layers. It gets very complicated, I can assure you. So, what wines should I taste? This is very person dependent. And it's not the way you would think. I thought it was genetic, but based more on gender. Turns out it's genetic, but based on your frontal taste buds. So, for people that are non-sensitive, they have less than 15 taste buds in that area. I just did, and we're not doing that again. They cannot detect bitterness, and their diets are usually consisted of rich and strongly flavored foods with spiciness. They're more open to trying new things, and they just want to live life large. This is 10 to 25% of people as far as who the population is. I have no idea about population demographics for that. Didn't even say in my sources, actually. I probably should have done some extra research on that. Nonetheless, these non-sensitive characters love the high tannin reds, the full-bodied whites, and sweet wines. Which, you know, I really like most of those wines, so maybe I'm non-sensitive, but I don't know. I feel like I am average, which is 50 to 75% of people. There are 50 to 30 taste buds in that same region. They detect the bitterness, but are not uncomfortable with the bitterness. They are either picky or they can be exploratory with their diets and wines, which I feel like I'm average to non-sensitive, but I don't know. They will try any wine, and there are wines that they will like, and there are wines that they will hate. And that describes a lot of people, so we're probably, quite a few of us are average here. And then we have the hypersensitive. I will not call these people poor unfortunate souls. However, every flavor to them is intense. They are very sensitive to it. They are very picky with their food and their wine because they have to be. If they're hypersensitive, they can have food triggers with flavor in their mouths and they're like, ah. So that is another 10 to 25% of people, and their taste bud count is greater than 30 in the same area. They like the sweet wines and low tannin reds. Excuse me. And the conclusion, which is the last part of my presentation, the thoughts on the wine. Did it taste good? I certainly hope so, because if it did not taste good, I will be sad, you will be sad, we'll all be sad and miserable. And then I may have to do a second wine tasting video, which I have done several in the past. For multitudes of reasons, most of them being the wine was literally flatter than my desk. And it's an old desk. 20 years old. Scary. Was it balanced? Now, a balanced wine is when flavors can be easily identified and you can clearly identify them. And imbalanced wines are flavors that can be overpowered. I've had this with reds that are more higher tannin and lower acidity. There are wines that, wow, that is so much black pepper. I feel like I just downed an entire pepper shake and it wasn't great. Others, this was way too sweet. Those kind of things. Excuse me. Sorry about that. And then you have to try to remember what was good and what wasn't. Which, you know, for me, it's fairly easy. Although I will admit that there are a lot more wines here now, and I will eventually take care of them. Maybe. And so, what I would suggest people do if they're newer to wine is to actually take wine notes, like you're actually in school, but it's for wine and not to take a test. And you want to be very specific with your wine notes. What did you taste? When did you taste it? What did you see in the wine? What did you smell in the wine? What did you taste in the wine? What were your thoughts and opinions at the time of that wine? And another very interesting piece of it, which I think is more psychological than anything else, is to include the experience of drinking the wine. What was the atmosphere like? Was it very chill, carefree, just social? Was it very intense where you're with your, I don't know, family, in-laws, under an intense amount of pressure? Was the person serving your wine scaring the living daylights out of you? Was there a weird, creepy dude that was nearly completely bald sitting right next to you and being, like, way too into this wine tasting? Hi, that's me, by the way. Things like that, they can shape your overall perception of the tasting of wine. Kind of weird. Kind of don't know how it works. However, it's very useful for some people to know the experience around that wine. Maybe something bad happened during the day, and that's why you hated the wine. Maybe you tried again differently, and then you're like, ooh, I like this, actually. So, those are my thoughts on how I taste wine in a, wow, very much more detailed setting by a lot more than I envisioned. Holy cow. Okay, so, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Not sure what the next lecture is going to be. I gotta work on that during the week. I got a lot of things to work on this upcoming week, with not just the lecture, but also the personal. I feel like something just happened, and I'm not sure if I like it. So I will have to go check on that. And I will be back in a week! Hopefully. I don't know. We'll try to be back in a week with another lecture for all of you. Good night, everybody.